What's up everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about mistakes that are made when people transition from boxing to kickboxing, common errors. And even if you're not a boxer transitioning to kickboxing, make sure you stick around for this episode because many of the mistakes that are made are common in all people, and very often people who are still building their skills and learning the sport. Alright guys, we have to keep in mind that anytime we make even the smallest change in a fight style, dramatic things have to happen to adapt to that sport. And kickboxing is very different than boxing in the fact that the lower half of the body starts engaging with striking tools. And the first common error that I want to talk with you guys about is stance work. Now, a lot of times boxers take a stance where they go basically, we want to take our body and we want to close it off. So they stand more like this. Great idea. If you're only able to attack from the hips up, you might as well take that torso, turn it off to the side. People are not allowed to attack the back. So now all of a sudden, the target is that much smaller with my body sideways. The problem with this in kickboxing is even though you're technically not supposed to attack the back, if somebody goes like this, you can still throw a round kick here. If I turn sideways and somebody throws a round kick and hits my back, that's kind of on me. And the ref is not going to warn you. They're just going to say, okay, you got to square up. So remember that sideways here is no good. This position is going to expose too much of your back. You want to stay square so that if a round kick comes from this side, you can get that block off or you can engage the arm and get the catch. Point number 2 is very similar, talking about the stance. We want to make sure our legs are not in this very narrow position where basically my back leg is hidden behind my front leg. Now that works very, very well when we talk about that boxing stance and turning the torso sideways. That's great. It's not great when low kicks are engaged because now with my legs in line, if I happen to get kicked, this leg is going to get picked up completely and then I'm in a terrible position for any follow-up shots that might come. Plus, it becomes very difficult for me to check properly because my body's sort of bladed sideways with this stance and then I go to lift and I have to turn everything. You're much better off having space between your feet as opposed to having your legs in line. Shoulder width with your stance so that you can lift that checkup when required. The next thing we need to keep in mind on the transition from boxing to kickboxing is in boxing, there's a lot of head movement. You're moving all the time, getting that head off the center line. The problem with engaging too much head movement in kickboxing is it's very easy to slip and run into a kick. So if I went something like jab to here, and somebody tries to every time evade the shots with head movement, bump, 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 and you're taking those shots up to the head. And remember, it's even worse when you slip into a kick. That's going to ring you extra because now you have force meeting force. So the idea of slipping all the time is not as important as having a high guard and learning how to block and then counter back off the attacks your opponent's throwing at you. The next thing I want to talk about is what we see in boxing very often. People using lengthy jabs. They lunge forward and they come back. And that's a great technique. I really like that technique. The problem though, with leaving your back leg way back here, if you decide to start following up, is you now have no follow-up kick. You cannot lift this leg up. Well, I mean, you could, but it's going to be so slow and heavy. So we need to make sure that if we do engage forward for our punch, the back foot follows. So we're back in a narrow base stance. We do not want to end up in a wide, lengthy stance at any point because it's going to slow up your kicks. You want to be shoulder length in width and kind of about 50% longer in length. I don't like going too deep. Once I start getting anything past about this length here, just a little in front of the lead knee and just a little bit behind the glute, anything past that is going to slow you up dramatically on your kicks. So make sure your stance work is short, and even when you start from short, make sure you don't end up in long and then stay stationary for too long. Combos do not work the same way unless you're relying strictly upon your hands. Now, a very hard lesson for anybody who's used to boxing is going to be defense for the legs. The defense for the legs is going to change up everything. Punches to the head, to the body, everything's the same. Keep your hands tight, maybe the occasional bit of head movement, but very small on that, as we talked about already, but you're going to be blocking. You're going to have everything really snug. When kicks come, you don't want to just stay here, and that's what's going to be very different. People get very comfortable with punches and having a tight guard, but for kicks, that's terrible. You don't want to be here and have kicks banging off your bicep. That'll burn your arms down, it'll bruise them, you won't be able to throw shots back because they're going to shut down. You have to learn on the kicks defensively to engage either two arms or to let arms reach out to wrap up kicks. Again, very different when you've trained in boxing for so long where everything's tight, everything's snug. Now you have to go, okay, I'm going to take this hand, I'm going to reach it away from my head. This will take time and dedication. When you're shadow boxing, think so much about catching techniques, scooping techniques. Whatever you're working, you're thinking hands extend away from the head, but at the same time, you want to be thinking about safety. If I overreach, I leave a space for a kick to come down. So I still keep things fairly snug. If I'm going for a catch, I come up, I clear the head, and I grab, as opposed to dropping, leaving a space there for the kick to land, and then trying to catch. But overall, this will be very difficult for boxers because it's such an opposing idea of defense. But start working it, because you don't want to be that guy who just keeps getting kicked and kicked and kicked and kicked, and then all of a sudden you can't even throw back with your arms because they're so bruised and beat up. And the final thing I want to talk with you guys about today, which is going to be a big difficulty for most people, is putting the offense together when you're flowing from hands to feet. Because many people are going to want to get in and throw their hands. Now, most commonly, people will just finish with a kick. I punch, I punch, I punch, I punch, finish with a kick. That'll be comfortable. It won't be too foreign. You can think, okay, throw the hands, engage the feet. But that is one of the less effective ways if you want to be really sneaky. You're better off doing something like punch, punch, throw a kick, and then come back with some more punches and into the lower half of the body. Or, if your hands are really good, getting used to starting with a kick and then using the hands. The kick can close the distance, and then you can fall in to your strong techniques, which you're already comfortable with. Keep that in mind as you work and progress your kickboxing skills. Start with the legs early, or sometimes put them mid-combo, and then work finishing with your hands, as opposed to what many people do, which is start with the hands and finish with the leg. That's great, but if your hands are your strong suit, they're your strength, sometimes the kicks will just be setups to create openings. I blast, I create an opening, and then I get back to what I'm best at. Not a lot of coaches are going to teach that method, but I think it's one that's very important for people who have very strong hands. And that's it, guys. That's all I want to talk about with you today about the transition from boxing to kickboxing. There are many, many more points I could go into, so if you want a follow-up episode, let me know in the comments down below. If you guys enjoyed the video, please give it a like. If you haven't already, join the channel, get subscribed. As always, guys, train hard, and I'll see you back here soon for another video.